Okay, good morning everyone. So I'm going to talk to you today about the SAMR model and our online learning strategy in geography. The aims are to introduce you to the SAMR model and then outline how it's being used to inform the blended learning strategy in geography. In terms of the structure, so I'm going to show you the SAMR model first of all, show you why it's created and show you what the different letters stand for. Then I'm just going to quickly show you the research informed strategy that we've implemented in geography over the past kind of 9 months. And then finally, a couple of things that we're doing in practice. So the SAMR model is created by this guy here. His name is Dr. Ruben Putin-Jura. I think I pronounced that correctly. However, it wasn't created as a response to COVID. Instead, it's a way to standardize the language we use to talk about our digital learning strategies. Now, essentially, there are 4 different categorizations of how technology can be used in the classroom. And those 4 different things are substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. So this is how the SAMR model looks in practice, and I'll give you some examples of these in a second. But to begin with, I just want to define these 4 keywords. So substitution, so technology acts as a direct substitute with no functional change. Augmentation, technology acts as a direct substitute, but there is some form of functional improvement, and I'll talk about how that can be done. Then we've got modification, so technology allows for significant task redesign. And then finally, redefinition, so we can do something with technology that was previously inconceivable. So some examples of these. So substitution, you could move your baseline assessment online. You can move your PowerPoints or your worksheets into G Suite and then share them into the students. Augmentation, so we do something extra. So we can edit our baseline assessment into some multiple choice questions on, say, Google Forms. We then share it with our students, and our students can receive instantaneous feedback based on answer keys and things like that. Modification, so we're doing something online that previously couldn't happen. So students can work collaboratively on a shared Google Doc to complete a series of tasks. Now the final one, redefinition, so this is transformative practice. Now I've had to use a geography example here. So what we can do when we're redefining something is use a simulation app to choose appropriate building materials to see how well that building withstands an earthquake. And I'm sure there's different examples in your subjects. In terms of the SAMR model, it is not Bloom's. So this model is not saying that redefinition is better than substitution, or that augmentation is better than substitution, but not quite as good as modification. That isn't how this model works. What it is saying is that anything you do in any of these 4 categories in terms of your online learning could be valid for a particular lesson or for a particular set of students. Instead, it's about thinking, have you got a range of activities, and are you using this language when you're justifying your learning activities? So in terms of the geography strategy, what we're trying to do is collate or triangulate 3 different things to meet our student needs. So the first one is the DfE guidelines for the reopening of school. The second one is thinking about the SAMR model and what activities we can post online according to that model. And then the third one is the SIP or TIP priorities. So I just want to very, very quickly review the DfE guidelines. So these were the ones that were published on like Friday the 1st of September, the Friday before we all came back on the 3rd, I believe. And the guidelines still haven't changed from the DfE. So the first one is that in subjects, you can prioritise the most important components of your curriculum for student progression. The second one is that remote education should align with in-school provision, and we should be building capability to educate remotely. The next one is our curriculum planning should be informed by an assessment of pupils' starting points, and this should address the gaps in their knowledge and skills. And then the next one is making effective use of regular formative assessment. And then the final one, and this is still the case as it stands today, that the school's normal curriculum should be returned to normal by summer of 2021. So the first thing we did as a department was modify our schemes of learning and midterm plans. And we modified them to include national curriculum links for each lesson. So what this means is, if going back to the DfE guidelines, we need to modify that curriculum because of lockdowns, we can look at where there's duplication in each scheme of learning, and then maybe the lesson that's duplicated in terms of the national curriculum link can be moved online, whereas the lessons that aren't duplicated need to be taught in the classroom. The other thing we've got is the homework links that are there to consolidate the student knowledge. Oh, and as well the formative assessment tasks. Next thing we've done is created baseline assessments for each scheme of learning, multiple choice, low stakes questioning here. At the moment, we're trying to make sure these are conducted in class as much as we can. However, we can easily modify these baseline assessments to post online if we need to. We've also included a metacognition here. So what do you already know in terms of this scheme of learning, and what do you need to work on? Next thing we've done is regular formative assessment. Now the priority here is to try to do the formative assessment in class when possible. So there are lots of formative assessment activities that are embedded into our PowerPoints and embedded into our midterm plans and schemes of learning. They can be easily modified to be taught online. However, because the DfE has said we should be prioritising formative assessment, we will try to do those in class. End of unit assessments, however, so the summative assessments, we're trying to move them and modify them onto Google Forms. Now this was originally born out of necessity because we had year groups that needed to do online end of unit assessments who were in lockdown, so we got them online and did them, and it actually worked very successfully for the most part. We're also experimenting with redefining feedback on these assessments with videos that outline the common misconceptions. In terms of our homework, so pretty much all of our homework is online now. We use Oak Academy heavily for Key Stage 3 and Year 9, and then GCSE Pod and GCSE Bite Size in terms of our kind of Year 10, Year 11 homework. GCSE Pod has changed recently. There's lots of new functionality in there, so it is worth having an explore. And we've also kind of modified our revision sheets for Year 11 and Year 10 to include links to online resources. Now, where possible, this is self-marked homework, so it's either kind of GCSE Pod multiple choice, or there's we've done green pen exemplar answers that the students can mark. And then the final thing we're doing is the literacy and wider reading. So we've got a section on each Google Classroom. In that section, we've got the wider reading policy for geography, and we've also got keyword lists for each of our schemes of learning, as well as some kind of additional article that students should read, an extension or a challenge article that students should read based on that scheme of learning. So that's kind of where we are. We're trying to embed the SAMR model. Obviously there, in terms of kind of that redefinition of student learning, there is still some work to do there. But yeah, thanks for listening.